which boosts your competitiveness as well as your productivity in the manufacturing industry. I know that the esteemed speakers from the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce will get into the nitty-gritty of what exactly the PIR incentive for manufacturing is. But just to add, the main benefits of the incentive are duty-free imports, as well as GCT deferrals on imports, and 50% discount on customs administrative duties. Well, fees, sorry, that's CAF for short. So just a little housekeeping. So before we start, I just want to remind everybody to please mute your mics just to minimize any background noises, as well as to jot down your questions, as we'll have a dedicated Q&A session later. So with all of that being said, we'll now jump start with our first speaker from the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, who is Mr. Shane Harris. He will be presenting on the productive inputs relief, and he's the scrap metal policy and monitoring officer at MIIC. So he's acting. So Rasheen, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Am I being heard? Am I being seen?
We are hearing you, Rasheen. Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning
Adjust
again.
your camera.
Adjust it. Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Good morning again to members of the JMEA and other specially invited guests. My name is Shane Harris, Acting Scrap Metal Policy and Monitoring Officer in the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. The industry division specifically, which I'm a team member, we have responsibility, along with the incentives unit of the Jamaica Customs Agency, to co-administer manufacturing status fiscal incentives under the productive inputs relief. Just to mention briefly that the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce is the arm of the government of Jamaica, which has responsibility for the manufacturing sector. And in keeping with our mandate and functions, we were given this responsibility along with customs to co-administer, to facilitate the processing of applications for these incentives and to advise the public, the manufacturing stakeholders, persons who are interested in either being a part or in just simply knowing what the information is with respect to applying for these incentives. We are tasked with sensitizing, informing, and giving the accurate information, as well as to clear up anything that needs to be clarified. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Thankful to the JMEA for bringing us on board, because this is definitely a part of what we do. We are also in the business of being advocates or in the business of facilitating business advocacy for our manufacturers and different stakeholders. So anywhere we see the need to sensitize and to provide accurate information, that is our responsibility, and we welcome all opportunities to do so. I am actually here for more of a intermediary introductory function. The speakers for today, or presenters for today, with respect to the administration of the productive inputs relief, will be Mr. Milton Henry and also Mrs. Trisha Tuma-Gale. Mr. Henry will be delving into the overview and application process for the PIR incentives for manufacturers, and Mrs. Tuma-Gale will be given an overview of the new and upcoming Jamaica Business Gateway, which is a platform that was launched last year, which will allow for a transition of a number of application processes within the government of Jamaica space, including applications for manufacturing status PIR. So at this point in time, I will now hand over to Mr. Henry. and thereafter we will get into the meat of the matter. So thanks again for having us. For those who would have joined since I would have started speaking, or to the latter part of my sentiments, my name is Rasheen Harris, Scrap Metal Monitoring Officer here in the Industry Division, Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. At this point in time, I would like to introduce Mr. Milton Henry, Acting Manufacturing Incentives Monitoring Officer, who will be giving an overview of the productive inputs relief for manufacturing status. Over to you now, Mr. Henry.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Is everybody hearing me?
Yes.
We're hearing.
All right, so good morning again. My name is Milton Henry, and I'll be guiding you through the process of the manufacturing status fiscal incentives. So we'll be going through 4 sections. Firstly, we'll be looking at the overview of the productive inputs relief facility, and then we'll be looking at the governing legislation. Then we'll be delving into the eligibility criteria, application phases, and the responsible entities. And for section 4, my colleague will be presenting, and that will be on the Jamaica Business Gateway. So firstly, an overview of the productive inputs relief facility. So in 2014, the government of Jamaica implemented the fiscal incentives regime, or the omnibus incentives legislation, to streamline the system of granting government fiscal incentives to companies and individuals alike. And entailed in this regime is the Productive Inputs Relief, PIR, facility created to increase productivity within the economy and incentivize multiple local industry stakeholders. And of course, this does not apply only to the manufacturing industry, but it also applies to other areas such as agriculture, tourism, healthcare, and the creative industries. But for the purpose of this presentation, we're focusing solely on the manufacturing industry. Now, the fiscal incentive regime was introduced on January 1, 2014 by 4 laws, and these laws are the Fiscal Incentives Act, the Income Tax Relief, Large-Scale Projects and Pioneer Industries Act, the Stamp Duty Act, and the Customs Tariff Revision Amendment Resolution 2013. And this is the one that we'll be focusing on. So the governing legislation of this PIR facility, so it is administered based on provisions within Part 5 of the 3rd schedule of the resolution. And this resolution provides for relief on imported productive inputs. So that is duty-free importation of specific categories of goods used in the manufacturing process. So the categories of the imported inputs are raw material, intermediate goods, packaging material, consumables, and machinery and equipment. And we'll now delve a little further into these items. So raw material, when I say raw material, I'm basically speaking of the primary good. So for example, the minerals, oil, steel, even water can be considered as a raw material. So this is the item in its original form that is not, that no change has been made to. And of course, intermediate goods, we're speaking of goods that have been transformed from their natural state, and of course, must undergo further processing. And when we speak about packaging material, we're speaking about materials that are used to contain or identify or preserve our natural goods, right? Or natural goods that are made. And when we're speaking of consumables, we're speaking of materials that are used, excluding certain items like lubricating oils or fuel oil, right? And these are expended in the process of manufacturing. And machinery and equipment, of course, these are items that are used, that are imported for direct use in the manufacture of goods, such as for quality control testing or packaging or climate controlled storage of the goods. So these entails the categories of the imported inputs for which the PIR would be granted for. And for duty exemptions, we have the import customs duty exemption, ICD. We have the additional stamp duty exemption, the standard compliance fee exemption, the general consumption tax deferment, and this is applicable only to manufacturers. And of course, there's a 50% discount regarding the custom administrative fees. And now we look at the eligibility criteria, the application phases, and the responsible entities. And so the production process must satisfy the definition of manufacturing as stated in the amendment to the Customs Act of 2013 to be approved for manufacturing status. And so to be eligible, this is basically saying to be eligible for PIR, you have to meet the definition of manufacturing. And here we have, it is defined as the production of goods in Jamaica that are produced by a process which results in the transformation, that's the key word here, the transformation of the raw material or the intermediate good that's used in the process into goods that are new or distinct. So of course, if we have, let's say, for example, a lot of us here who works in office would probably have sticky pads. And of course, you know, they come in various sizes. But of course, the raw material would be considered as a whole, a large sheet of paper. Now, this large sheet of paper would undergo some form of cutting, dividing, which would then transform it, or say it would then be transformed into the smaller sizes that would then undergo some other form of work, which would then have us having together these sticky pads in these various sizes with the different amount of sheets. And so, of course, the transformation doesn't have to be something very large. It could also be a smaller type of transformation, but of course, as long as it is seen, as long as the transformation is seen, and of course, the final good, you know, can be distinct from the raw material. And of course, the raw material cannot be used it cannot be used with the intention of the final good, which means that, of course, you want to have these sticky pads. You can't use a large sheet of paper as a sticky pad. It has to go through some process, some form of transformation to be made into a sticky pad. All right, so that's just an example there. And so the responsible entities with regards to the manufacturing industry, for PIRs to be granted, we have the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce and the Jamaica Customs Agency. So we work together. So the arm of the government of Jamaica that is tasked with monitoring and facilitating the development of the manufacturing sector, that's the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. And the MIIC, Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, enables the passage of legislation impacting the sector and advocates for the economic well-being of local manufacturers. And with regards to the Jamaica Customs Agency, they manage the collection of revenue so that's duties and so forth, at the ports of entry. So the JCA reviews import entries submitted at the port, monitors import data, and conducts audit of PIR recipients. And with regards to the application phases, now to be granted PIR manufacturing status, the company would have to prepare an application, and this application would be sent to the ministry along with supporting documents such as, of course, a copy of the valid TCC. So, of course, you have to ensure that you're tax compliant, a copy of the certificate of incorporation, and, of course, a copy of your process flow chart for the item that you are manufacturing. It's more than one item. So, of course, you have to submit a flow chart for each item. So, MIIC would then review these documents and then refer the application to the incentives unit of the Jamaica Customs Agency. The JCA will then schedule a date for joint site visit to be conducted. And of course, this joint site visit includes the Ministry of Industry, a team from the Ministry of Industry, along with a team from the Jamaica Customs Agency. And of course, this site visit would be conducted at the production facility just to ensure that the items that for which the company would be seeking incentives for would, of course, be meeting the requirements for which the PIR is to be granted. Then the MIIC would then submit a recommendation concerning the manufacturer that would be sent to the JCA based on the visit that would have been conducted. And finally, the JCA will then issue a letter to the manufacturer based on the final determination that is made. And just to note, when the JCA approves these incentives, there are two types basically. There's the provisional acceptance, and this is for new companies that would have not yet started production. And so let's say there's a company that is in the pipeline to begin, registered and everything, but production has not started as yet, and they have items that they are about to ship into the island, which would, of course, be used in production. So then a provisional acceptance would be granted, and that would last for either 6 months or 1 year. And of course, for a regular acceptance now, that would basically, that would be valid for a period of 3 years. So any company that would be granted PIR, let's say today is April 25. So a company that is granted PIR today would be valid up until April 2027. But for those who would have been granted PIR on a provisional basis, it would either last for 6 months or 1 year, and that would be dependent upon what the JCA would recommend. And that's it on the application phase and the implementation of the PIR. We will now move over to Mrs. Trisha Tuma-Gale, who will present on the Jamaica Business Gateway. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I am Trisha Tuma-Gale, Business Facilitation Officer in the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. And I'll be taking you through the Jamaica Business Gateway. The Jamaica Business Gateway, formerly known as otherwise JBG, is a unified virtual space designed to connect businesses with the information and tools needed to engage and transact business with the government. This is an initiative of the Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, being executed by JAMPRO and was launched in May 2023. Businesses can access information and submit applications for upwards of 14 business to government processes with just a few clicks. Some of the benefits of the JBG: the government is keen on ensuring all businesses have fast, efficient, and easy access to the resources they need to be successful. And with that, the gateway will provide 24 hours access to information on the platform. You would have greater transparency when dealing with government entities, in that everything will be online, and so it will be clear-cut. The ability to complete and submit your applications and uploading the supporting documents online at your own time. The creation of user profiles and registration of investment projects. So manufacturers can create their own profiles in order to register for upcoming projects. It would be a one-stop shop approach so that you will have a faster turnaround time and approval times. It's also allow you the ability to track all your applications across government on a single dashboard. So it's a one-stop shop approach. The application process of the PIR will be transitioned to the JBG eventually. So we will be taking in consideration of all the PIR application processes spanning the Ministries of Health, the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of Agriculture, and the manufacturing sector, which is the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, and the Ministry of Entertainment, Gender, Culture, and Sports. Where can we find the gateway? The site is jamaicabusinessgateway.com, and I will show you what the site looks like as is. And just to note that even though it is launched, the site is up and ready, but we have not transitioned as yet. And as such, we will continue to use the PIR process that is available at the moment until the site is up and ready for persons to be able to use and access at a later date. So you'll be advised when it is up and running and ready for use. Let me just go over to show you what the gateway looks like. Platform. Are you seeing?
Yes, we're
Yes.
seeing.
Okay, so this is what the platform will look like. So you can easily accessible and easy to use. And so further information will be available, as I said, at a later date on how it is used and when exactly will be the starting date. For this, I thank you, and we'll now move for any questions and answers section.
Patricia, there will be a question and answer session later. So the next speaker, who is
Okay.
Camille, can go ahead. Yes.
Okay, so we just save that for the last. Okay, thank you.
Just before Mrs. Dabney comes in, ladies and gentlemen, are you hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Yes, I just wanted to insert a quick word just before Mrs. Dabney comes in. So as was just stated, There's a process that currently obtains with respect to PIR application procedures. One of the incentives provided under the PIR regime is the duty-free exemption component. However, there are some items which are not eligible, some productive inputs that are not eligible for duty exemption under PIR, and there is another dispensation or arrangement within the government in collaboration with CARICOM, which allows for what is referred to as the Common External Tariff CET suspension. And therefore, any duty exemptions that cannot be accessed under PIR, manufacturers may be able to access that duty-free component under the CET suspension. I believe Ms. Moses will give a quick word in terms of providing additional information on that before Mrs. Dobsney comes in. So I'll now make way for Shamila Moses to provide that insert.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Good
Yes,
morning,
Shamila, we're
Shamila. Yes, we
hearing
can hear you.
All right. I'm just going to give a brief history on why there has been somewhat of an amendment in the administration of the goods. In February of this year, the Caribbean Court of Justice ruled in favor of Dominican company DCP Successors Limited, who brought a case against the state of Jamaica. Their claim was that duty relief treaty. For reference, DCP Successors manufactures soap noodles, which are used to manufacture soaps. They're made based on coconut oils and other types of oils, depending on the manufacturer. According to the terms of the CARICOM Treaty, specifically Article 84, it must first be determined that in order for a company to get the suspension of the CET or get the import duty relief, you must determine that this product is not being manufactured regionally or locally, and it is not being manufactured to satisfy your demand or at the quality that you're looking for. The court ruled in favor of DCP Successors Limited, and as a result, as of March 14th, the government of Jamaica took a decision to remove or temporarily suspend the granting of the import duty relief under the PIR for a specific list of goods, which is considered to be the Schedule 3 in the CARICOM Treaty. It refers specifically to fats and oils. Now, for reference, all of the other benefits applicable under the PIR will continue to apply for this list of goods. However, it is just the import duty relief that will no longer be applied under the PIR. The decision has been taken, however, that for these particular goods, you can apply for the CET suspension. And just for context, the import duty that we are speaking about is really the common external tariff that has been agreed upon under the CARICOM Treaty, to which Ms. Dobney will speak more on when she does her presentation. As for the Schedule 3, Jamaica has taken a decision to suspend the CET, to suspend the import duty relief for this list of goods. It's specific only to Jamaica. And the purpose of doing so is to prevent any further litigation and to ensure that we are complying with the ruling. This is a temporary measure, and the ministry has taken a decision to review the entire PIR regime and to see how we can improve the overall administration of the PIR. just for context, the court ruled that the PIR itself does not breach the treaty at all. So you don't have to worry that the PIR benefits are going to be removed later on down the line. Their only issue was that in terms of the administration, we needed to strengthen that in terms of ensuring that there isn't supply in the region. There are different to afford or give or grant import duty relief because we are trying to protect the productive sector within the region. So these terms of the treaties also benefit Jamaican manufacturers. However, does not mean that you cannot grant. In cases where you cannot find these inputs regionally, you can still apply to have the common external tariff suspended or the import duty. So with this decision, I want to reinforce that this is just a temporary decision for the moment. And you can get the list from the ministry for those who have already gotten the PIR for these specific goods. If you got it prior to the prior to March 14th, you will not be impacted. You will continue to benefit from the import duty relief, but the ministry will be monitoring those products that have benefited from the PIR. So just for reference, just a reminder, this is not applying to the other goods, only the list of goods that fall under this list. It's very timely that we are having this discussion right now because at the CARICOM Secretariat where I'm at, we are discussing the administration of the CET. We are reviewing the rates of duties under the CET regime as well as the rules of origin. And one of the things we need to remind manufacturers who are benefiting from the CET suspension, who would like to apply for the CET suspension, is that you apply to renew your CET suspension or you apply for a new CET suspension 3 months in advance. The process takes a minimum of a month and a half, and it is in your best interest to apply way in advance before your CET suspension certificate expires so that you do not disrupt your production. And one of the recommendations is to include the application of the CET suspension as part of your business's overall production planning and projection. And just like the PIR, the CARICOM, the CET suspension is going to eventually be processed through the Jamaica Business Gateway, which will totally transform the application process and make it digital. One of the things we need to bear in mind in applying for a CET suspension, a regional search must be done. So this is why it takes so long, and it is still at the discretion of the CARICOM Secretariat to grant the suspension. So this is not an automatic benefit in a sense. Once you meet the criteria and the product is not available regionally, you can pretty much guarantee that it's going to be granted, but it's still at the discretion of the CARICOM Secretariat. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Ms. Camille Dobney, who is the CARICOM Desk Officer at the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, and she is also responsible for administrating and processing applications for external tariff suspension and safeguard. So thank you.
Morning, everyone. Can you all see me?
Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
Camille.
So my name is Camille Dobney. From the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, officer responsible for processing the CET suspension and safeguard. Likewise, officer responsible for communicating CARICOM responses to the CARICOM Secretariat as it relates to the availability of products that can be provided to the region from Jamaica. All right. I want to quickly just to inform what we do here in the Commerce Division. I'm a part of the Commerce Division in the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. So the Commerce Division is responsible for designing and implementing policies, programs, strategies, and legislation that ensure a stable, competitive, and transparent business and a commercial environment aimed at increasing commercial activities, sustaining businesses, and promoting export. So, with regards to what I do, in accordance with the provision of the revised Treaty of Shagaramas, the division advances its mandates through its service offering to manufacturing sector as the competent authority for the issuance of CARICOM safeguard and suspension. So I am going to get right into the presentation. Common External Tariff, CET, Article 82 of the revised Treaty of Shagaramas is an establishment of the CET, a common rate of duty applied by all CARICOM member states to a product imported from a non-CARICOM or extra-regional country. The CET suspension is an amended Article 83 under the revised Treaty of Shagaramas, which allows the importation of raw materials and intermediate goods duty-free. And the CT suspension is for a period of 12 months. And it also enables manufacturers to be more competitive, one of the benefits. The CET suspension is a product. The conditions under the CT suspension is that a product is not being produced in the community. The quantity of the product being produced in the community does not satisfy the demand of the community, or the quality of the product being produced in the community is below the community standard, or a standard use of which is authorized by quoted. And that's the Council of Trade and Economic Development, shortening for quoted. When applying for a CT suspension, applicants must submit the following documents. So you are to complete a CT suspension form, a CARICOM value form, and for people who are not renewing, new applicants, first step, you have to also submit your company business registration certificate. So this is, let me just show some of the forms that you use. This is the value form, which carries your company name, address, the tariff heading. For example, if a company would like to seek a suspension on refined sugar, you will put on the approved item the name of the item, the tariff code heading, the quantity, and the measures that it's supposed to be measured by, whether in kg, metric tons, the values for it, the person who is preparing the application signature, the date in which you're applying for the CT suspension. And we also encourage persons to stamp it with their company stamp. So the value form goes alongside with the suspension form. So on the suspension form, it's a little bit more detailed. So it carries your company name, address, similar to the value form, the tariff code heading, the description, which is the sugar, for example, if a company would like to request for the sugar, the quantity in which, and the values, and the value, all the values are to be reflected in USD currency. Additionally, the technical specifications of the product, the type of product. So this is sugar. So this will show the degree of it, the percentage of sugar, what you're looking for. So it can also be granulated sugar as well. So you put in detail what it is. And sometimes we will ask for the data sheet for the sugar in whom you're applying it from, whichever supplier you're getting it from, that information should be shared to. This carries a CT rate of 40%. So you're required to fill out all these columns. Rate proposed is usually 0. The period, as I said earlier, is for 12 months. However, you have to put specific dates on the suspension form. So here, for example, September 25th, 2023 to September 26th, 2024. So 12 months, 1 year. Indication of urgency. They can, for example, you can put very urgent. Under column I, you are to tick whether it's not being produced regionally, does not satisfy the demand for your company, and the quality is below standard. Evidence of inability to supply. So you either put tick unfulfilled orders, transportation logistics, efforts made to obtain the regional supplies, evidence of consultation locally. You put information, it don't necessarily have to be this. So for example, no local supplier, regional, no regional supplier. Region should be right there, sorry. So let us look at the process in which the CT suspension is to be applied. So the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, which is us, MIIC, we receive the application and we check for accuracy, ensure that the forms are completed properly. Then we do a local consultation to determine if the product is available locally. If the product is available locally, we go right here, we will contact the manufacturer that say they can supply the product, and the supplier and the company that is applying for the product. We will give them the details in which the contact information and details of the supplier that is able to supply the product, and they also meets the technical specification and the quality of what the company is requesting, and also the quantity of the item if it is available locally. However, if the product is not available locally, we will then proceed with the application. This application will be sent over to the Ministry of Finance. Because of revenue implications, they are a part of the process as well. So we will submit all the necessary documentation to them, the completed suspension and value form, along with any other supporting documents, to the Ministry of Finance for consideration. We await their response. We will get a letter from them if there's no objection to the application. Then now when we receive that, we will submit the completed suspension form. If the product needed additional documentation relating to the tech specs of it, that will be sent over also to the CARICOM Secretariat after we receive feedback from the Ministry of Finance. Then a regional assessment is done within CARICOM. When that regional assessment is done and there is a known supplier for the product right here, the CARICOM Secretariat will reach out to MIIC and give us the necessary information, contact details, and who can supply the product and all of that. Then now MIIC will communicate the information to the local manufacturer here in Jamaica. However, if the product is not available regionally, a suspension certificate is granted. So one is generated from CARICOM. They will send that directly here to MIIC. So when we get that suspension certificate, that information is now communicated to them back to the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service for them to prepare a tax relief advisory for the company to whom I had requested for the CT suspension certificate. And this communication will also be given to the company out here who had applied for the suspension. All right. Now, just a brief information also on this. So that's it for the suspension process. Now we're going to just go quickly through the safeguard process relating to safeguard certificate for manufacturers here. So a safeguard is an incentive that enables products manufactured in CARICOM to comply with the rules of origin criteria. Where extra-regional inputs are used, it allows registered companies to use extra-regional inputs and still have their products qualify for duty-free access under the CARICOM Treaty. And this can be found under Article 84, Paragraph 7 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. Also, the rules of origin is a set of criteria that determines the origin of a product. So for the safeguard, just like the suspension, applicants must submit the following: a completed safeguard form along with a detailed description of items in which they want. And for new applicants who are not renewing a safeguard, they must submit a copy of their company business registration as well. And this is how the safeguard form looks. However, the safeguard does not carry a value form. So just that form there, and this is a process for the safeguard where MIIC receives the application, local consultation is done, ensure that we cover all due diligence. If it is available locally, we communicate the information to the company who applied. If it is not, we send this, if it is not, we send it straight to the CARICOM Secretariat. Regional assessment is done. If a regional assessment is done and there is a known supplier for the product in which the company is applying for, we get that information from the CARICOM Secretariat. They will write the ministry and we communicate that information to them. However, if there's no known supplier, automatically that certificate is granted. MIIC now submits that certificate to the Trade Board Limited for further processing. And then now MIIC will also communicate the information to the company here in Jamaica. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you all very much for listening.
Thanks, Camille. Before we get into the Q&A session, is it possible for each presenter to just put your contact details in the chat, please?
Certainly, I have no problem with that.
Okay, great.
He has stopped screen share.
Q&A? Okay, with that being said, does anyone have any questions? Is everyone hearing me? Hello?
Yes, we're hearing you, Shakera. So just
Okay,
asking
great.
everyone, if you have a question, please put it in the chat or indicate by raise of hand.
I just wanted to add something for manufacturers to keep in mind. When it comes to the processing of applications for CT suspension, for instance, it takes a minimum of 14 days for the CARICOM Secretariat to conduct a switch. So that's the amount of time that they have stipulated.
14 to 21, Shamila, sorry.
14 to 21. So if they don't get a response from the region within 14 days, then they give another 7 days for a response. And based on the responses, then a determination is going to be made. So that kind of brings into context the time frame it takes for CET suspension processing. So that brings it to a minimum of 2 months. And if it is a particularly sensitive product for a member state, it may take longer, which is why we ask that members, companies, ensure to apply or reapply early. So it is safe to set your time frame for which you want to apply for the CET maybe 3 months in advance, 3 months subsequent to the time frame that the data that in which you apply, you submit your application. So 3 to 6 months would be a good bet in terms of forecasting when you would require another shipment, for instance, or you may want to place an order. You should also take into consideration that every product or industry has different procurement processes. And so you should treat the suspension and safeguard applications as a planning tool as opposed to a remedy to a shipping crisis or something of the sort.
Thanks, Shamila. Again, does anyone have any questions? Oh, I'm seeing some questions coming in the chat. Great.
So the first question is from Michael Pandey, and the question says, my client has purchased land and wants to build his factory. We're applying for provisional status. Do we qualify for building materials needed to construct the factory?
I'll respond to that one, Shanicia. So as the name suggests, the regime provides fiscal incentives for productive inputs that will be used in the manufacturing or production of finished goods. And the categories are raw materials, intermediate goods, consumables, packaging items, and machinery. So I say that all to say that the answer is no. Building material to construct a facility, those are not eligible for fiscal incentives. When the facility has been constructed and the individual company is now ready to import items to be used within the production process, as long as they fit within any one of those 5 categories that I just mentioned, then it is at that point that they would be eligible to acquire those incentives. And it's also important to note, even within the legislation, there is a component giving or granting a provision for cold or climate controlled storage. So for those large industrial freezer rooms, those qualify as well. And when some facilities, those form parts of the overall structure of the facility. But with respect to other building materials like steel, sand, block, cement, no.
Okay, thank you for that response, Mr. Harris. And the next question, has there been any challenges in the application processes for both the PIR application and the safeguard applications? Have you heard anything with regards to the challenges in these areas? Or has there been any changes? Okay, so has there been any changes in the application process for both the PIR application and safeguard processes?
The processes, thank you for that question. The processes that have been explained earlier during this presentation, those are the processes which still obtain. And I speak primarily from the perspective of the industry division, but I think it also extends to the commerce division with respect to CT suspension. But these processes still obtain. If there are any changes, whether in the form of a transition to the JBJ platform or otherwise, it will be properly communicated to our stakeholders at the point of them making contact with the ministry. I'm not sure if the commerce division would like to add.
As it relates to the safeguard process, Mr. Lewis, I can see that it's Mr. Lewis, Andrew Lewis. The safeguard process remains the same, no changes.
Okay, good. Carlton Lawrence, sorry, has raised his hand. You can go ahead, Mr. Lawrence.
Yes, good morning, it still is, yes. I also put my question in the chat just now, but referring to this, my company is a food and beverage manufacturing company, and we are now looking to import machinery and other raw materials. Machinery in specific from China and the raw materials from various countries. How are we impacted or can we benefit from this? Did you hear me?
Rasheen?
Yes, I'm available. A few technical glitches and challenges on this end.
In that case, Carlton, can you please repeat your question?
Yeah, man, certainly.
Yes, go ahead,
But for
please.
your reference, it's also in the chat. My company is a food and beverage manufacturing company, and we are now looking to import machinery, including cold room that you just mentioned, but other processing machinery, such as filling machines, packaging machines, and those things. We also looking to import. We also look to import raw materials from other various countries. And I'm wondering how could we benefit from the arrangements you're referring to?
As stated, we had some issues with respect to technology and connectivity. Did you state what item it is that you either manufacture or plan to manufacture specifically?
No, well, food and beverages, juices, some authentic juices and blend of juices, specifically for health benefits, sauces, condiments, and the likes.
Okay, thanks for that clarity.
Yes.
It does sound as if you should be able to qualify. However, with respect to providing you with a definitive answer if you are or are not eligible, the process would have to take place, which would start by you applying through the ministry, and by submitting the necessary documentation and a referral made to customs, and thereafter site inspection done at your facility.
Good.
Where is your site facility located?
We are at 235 Marcus Garvey Drive.
Okay. So feel free to contact the ministry. I believe persons from this end would have given their contact information.
Unfortunately, I came in rather late because I was actually on a site looking at some stuff and could not join. So I joined on your will on the way. So a lot of what was said I missed. So I asked about the recording being available, and I was told it would be. So I should probably listen to that first. But in the meantime, if I want to apply, what's my first step?
To contact the ministry, whether via a phone call or email. The ministry's telephone number is 876, and this is for the purpose of all other persons listening as well.
Yeah.
876-968-7116, and you can ask to be transferred to the industry division.
Industry division. Okay, good.
Yeah, the industry division's email is industry, that's INDUSTRY at miic.gov.jm.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
You're most welcome.
Great. The contact details for the persons who presented is also they're in the chat. The other question is from Nashana. Until the Business Gateway portal is up and running, where does one apply for PIR? I believe Rasheen just mentioned that you'd have to reach out to the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce and ask to be transferred to the Commerce Division, right, Rasheen?
The industry division.
Sorry.
Yes, so the industry division specifically has responsibility for the co-administration of the productive input relief fiscal incentives, while the commerce division has responsibility for the administration or co-administration of the CET, Common External Tariff Suspension. So that's the distinction. We have similar stakeholders, clients, but specifically in terms of what we offer, that's the distinction. Industry division, PIR, commerce division, CT suspension. But it's the same MIIC, just a note.
Great, thanks for the. Okay, great. We'll move on. So the other question is from Sasha Lee. She's asking if this new platform is replacing J Swift. Rasheen?
No,
Trisha?
not to my knowledge. It will not. No, the short answer is no.
Rashay, may I just jump in 1 second?
Certainly, Renee.
Hi, morning everyone. So just to add to what Rashay said just
You
now.
could introduce yourself, Renee,
sorry.
for the wider audience.
Sorry, I'm Renee Cowan, Trade Facilitation from the Ministry of Industry. So JSWIFT is actually a transactional site that provides trade regulatory services. So for example, import certificates, export certificates and permits, and you can pay for those on the platform. So it's very different from the business gateway.
Rasheen, you heard Renee?
Yes, I did. She provided clarity on what the JSWIFT, Jamaica Single Window for Trade, the purpose
Okay, I
that it
could hardly
serves.
hear. Okay, hardly hear.
Yes, so it allows for, it facilitates the primarily importation of, the provision of certain permits, licenses, permit certificates, to individuals who require special permits to import certain items which require same. So it will not replace, the JBJ will not replace JSWIFT. The JBJ is one additional platform or site which the government of Jamaica has created, implemented, coming along the heels of JSWIFT, JTIP, that's the Jamaica Trade Information Portal. So it's, this JBJ forms part of the thrust that the government is making with respect to improving, modernizing the way in which certain transactions are dealt with, in terms of how certain procedures are facilitated. So you can look out for more possibly additional platforms in the near future, medium to long term. But it's all in keeping with the government's efforts to modernize and to enhance the way in which it offers services to its clients and the general public.
Okay, thanks again, Rasheen. I'm seeing a question from Andre Mackenzie. His question is, my company will be importing furniture for our newly renovated manufacturing space, that is stainless steel, tables, sinks, shelves, etc. Will these be eligible for PIR?
just to clarify, the purpose of this facility is to make furniture? Was that what was said?
Andrew,
No,
do you want to specify, please? Because that was not stated.
Okay. Let's see.
another question, while that's being sorted, is if a freezer warehouse storage is acceptable under the PIR, shouldn't a ready-made warehouse also be acceptable? Rather than building materials in general.
Can you import the ready-made building? Because the building would have been up already, if that's my understanding. And that now the building would not be eligible.
Good morning. I could just shed some more clarity on that. All right, so if with the freezer, with the building, it would be something similar to the freezer, but it would be for warehouse. So it would come collapsible. So when it gets here, you would open it up and it'd be used as warehouse. Some of the freezers are like that as well. Understand? Was that clear?
You can repeat, please, Andre, for the sake of those who are not hearing so clearly, please.
Well, it's Ali, but I heard. You can go ahead, Trisha.
I would have to look in more detail in terms of how that is facilitated under the Act and see whether or not, but from the standpoint point of view in terms of it's not a familiar item or product we have ever had to deal with under the PIR. So we'd have to
Okay.
look further on that.
Okay, so I can send you some more information because I'm a food manufacturer, and for one of our products, it doesn't require a freezer. So this is in addition to what I said earlier. So one of our products, it doesn't necessarily require a freezer, but more of a cool room. Now, part of the warehouse, the ready-made warehouse that you could just build out, where all the parts and everything comes. A part of it, it's a cool room rather than a freezer. And then the other part is for dry goods. So perhaps I could communicate with you through email to give you more details to see how we could work on that. So you'd have a better understanding.
Yes, please do. We'll look into it once you send us the information.
Sure. Can I email be sent in the chat so I could take it down?
Yes, I'll put it in now.
All right, thank you.
Michael Pandey, you are requesting permission to speak. You can go ahead. Okay, all right. Over to you, Shakira.
Okay, so back to Andrew's question. So he's saying that he's going to use his product, back to the question. My company will be importing furnitures for our newly renovated manufacturing space. That is stainless steel tables, sinks, shelves, etc. Will these be eligible for the PIR? Then he made a comment to say that he'll be using these in the manufacturing of pharmaceuticals. Rasheen?
I think there's some more clarity that could be provided. Not necessarily asking for that clarity at this point, but what I would ask to be done is that contact be made with the ministry, and the necessary information will be assessed and the steps taken thereafter accordingly. It's a bit difficult for me to state if that's a eligible procedure or type of operation from where I sit at this point.
Okay, understand. So the final question, Mr. Michael Pandey, can you go ahead and speak? Okay, so I would like to take this time to thank everyone for joining this insightful session. I really hope that you all enjoyed and the discussions, as well as learned a lot, and will be reaching out to the ministry for either to learn more about the PIR benefits, to access the benefits, as well as maybe you want to send in a request for the suspension of the CET, or maybe the state utilize the safeguard mechanism. So if you have any further questions, feel free to utilize the contact details that are provided in the chat. Once more, I would like to extend a thank you to the esteemed speakers from the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. I learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure that the attendees learned a lot as well. So just to reiterate, so some of the benefits of the PIR incentive are duty-free importation of inputs used in production, GCT deferral on imports, as well as a 50% discount on the customs administrative fees, CAF for short. So if you, as well as if you can't access the benefits of the PIR, you can always feel free to request either a CET suspension as well as a safeguard mechanism. So thank you all for joining once more, and do have yourself a good afternoon. Bye.
You the same. Thank you.
Thank you.